What's a girl like you doing here alone in a place like this?" The voice coiled over her shoulder like cigarette smoke in a closed room. Kendra Holloway froze, her fingers still resting on the dog-eared page of a second-hand novel. She hadn't heard footsteps, only the sudden hush of the breeze through the oaks of Ashland Park, like the trees themselves had sucked in their breath. She turned slowly. Two men in uniform loomed over her, one older, built like the kind of man who spent more time leaning than listening, face grooved with the weight of too many unchecked years. The other younger, twitchier, eyes darting like he hadn't yet decided if he was in on the joke or terrified of it. Officer Rick Bowman smiled, the kind of smile that didn't reach his eyes but went straight for the throat. Next to him, Officer Joel Madsen shifted uneasily, not meeting Kendra's gaze. "I'm just reading," she said. Her voice sounded calmer than her hands felt. "Not doing anything wrong." "Depends," Bowman said, stepping closer. "Could be loitering. Could be casing the place. You got ID, sweetheart?" "This is a public park," she replied. "I have my ID in my bag if you need it." She moved slowly, reaching for her tote. "Nah," Bowman interrupted, eyes glinting. "I think we'll just do a visual inspection." It happened fast. The baton flicked like a whip. The hem of her dress jerked upward in a flash of air and skin and shame. Kendra gasped, stumbling back, yanking her skirt down with both hands. Her book fell, pages splayed like wings in the dirt. "What the hell is wrong with you?" she shouted. Her voice cracked but didn't collapse. "You just assaulted me." Bowman laughed, not nervously, not like someone caught, like someone used to walking away. "Lighten up. We're just having a little fun. It's Sunday." Madsen chuckled, but it came out wrong. Weak, embarrassed. His Adam's apple bobbed like he wanted to disappear. Kendra stood, not because she felt powerful, but because she refused to be small. "You think you can do this to anyone?" she said. "You think you'll get away with it?" "Not anyone," Bowman said. "Just girls like you." The words dropped like acid on concrete. Her heart pounded, but her hands moved steadily. She pulled out her phone. No trembling, no panic. She dialed a number she hadn't used in years. One ring, two, then a voice. "Naomi, is everything okay?" "She lifted my skirt," Kendra said. "I need you." A pause, then one word. "Where?" "Ashland Park, East Bench near the lake." "Stay put. I'm coming." Kendra hung up and sat back down, her hands clenched around the phone, her eyes locked on the water. Not afraid, just waiting. Because Naomi Carter wasn't just a former mentor. She was once the woman who walked into a foster home reeking of despair and said to a silent 12-year-old girl crouched near a broken radiator, "You don't have to stay here." Kendra had never forgotten that voice, that calm, that certainty. And now, 8 years later, she wasn't calling a friend. She was summoning justice. 15 minutes later, the quiet of the park was broken by the low growl of a dark Dodge Charger pulling onto the gravel path behind the service gate. Naomi stepped out of the car with her badge clipped to her belt, her boots dusty from morning drills, her eyes hidden behind mirrored aviators. She didn't slam the door, didn't shout. She walked, every step silent, every step heavy. She reached the edge of the clearing and stopped 10 feet from the two officers. "Badge numbers," she said. Calm, clear, like slicing through ice. Both men turned. Bowman smirked. "Excuse me?" "Badge numbers. Now." Her voice didn't rise. It dropped like an anchor. "And names." Bowman gave a lazy smile. Who's asking? Naomi flipped open her ID. The gold glint of internal affairs caught the sun like a blade. Sergeant Naomi Carter. Off duty, but not off justice. Madsen stiffened. Ma'am, we were just not talking to you, she said without breaking her gaze from Bowman. You think loitering applies to a girl with a book? We had reason to check. No, she said. You had opportunity. Don't confuse the two. The silence around them deepened. A jogger stopped. A couple, walking their dog, slowed. Phones appeared, raised quietly. Did you touch her? Naomi asked. Bowman's jaw clenched. She's making it up. So you won't mind me checking your body cam? Still no answer. Naomi turned to Kendra. You all right? Kendra nodded, the smallest nod, but not a surrendering one, a promise. Someone in the crowd whispered, I saw it. An elderly man with a cane stepped forward. He flicked her dress with his stick. Thought it was funny. I've got granddaughters. It wasn't funny. Naomi looked back to Bowman. Badge number? He said nothing, so she raised her phone, started recording. Refusing to identify during a misconduct allegation, she said aloud. Timestamp, witnessed. Kendra stood, her voice low but clear. Officer Rick Bowman, badge 31478. His partner is Joel Madsen, badge 30952. I memorized them. Naomi gave a small nod. Thank you. Then to the crowd, if you saw anything, please stay. Your voices matter. Slater shifted. His hands fumbled with his radio. Ma'am, Silence is over, Naomi said. Hand over your badges. You're both suspended pending investigation. Bowman scoffed. This is ridiculous. So was lifting the dress of a civilian with a baton. She took a step forward. Hand them over, or I'll call in the captain. Slowly, grudgingly, Madsen unhooked his badge and weapon. Bowman held his longer, then slammed it into her palm. You'll regret this, he hissed. Naomi leaned close enough for him to see himself reflected in her glasses. No, she said. You will. She turned to Kendra. You're not alone anymore. Kendra believed her. This time, she truly believed her. The precinct smelled of overbrewed coffee and floor wax, a sharp scent that clung to the walls like the weight of unspoken truths. Naomi Carter stepped through the entrance of the 8th District Station with her shoulders squared and her badge now fully visible against the dark navy of her pressed uniform. The chatter that usually filled the reception area halted, not loudly, but with that subtle shift that happens when the wrong person walks into the right place. Eyes tracked her as she passed, not out of curiosity but calculation. She knew the look. She'd worn it herself once before she realized it was better to be the storm than wait for one. Behind her walked Officer Rowena Mitchell from Internal Affairs, sharp-eyed and quiet, carrying the sealed evidence bag with the confiscated badges and weapons from Rick Bowman and Joel Madsen. Naomi didn't speak until she reached the captain's office. He was already waiting, hands on the desk, lips pressed into a thin line that barely masked the exhaustion under his eyes. Tell me this isn't going to make the evening news, he said. Naomi's reply was even, clipped, just like the report she'd handed him. You can worry about the press. I'll worry about the truth. He didn't argue. He just gestured toward the briefing room where Autumn Holloway sat waiting, wrapped in a thin gray hoodie, her knees pressed tightly together like she was still bracing for something. Naomi opened the door and stepped inside. Autumn looked up immediately. Her eyes weren't red, but they were dry in that brittle way that said they had burned long before the tears ever came. "Are you ready?" Naomi asked. Autumn nodded. "I think so." Naomi sat across from her, placing a folder gently on the table between them. "I'm not going to lie to you," she said. "This won't be easy. There'll be pushback. People will question your motives. They'll pretend they don't understand the difference between abuse and authority." Autumn's jaw tightened, but she didn't look away. "I don't care. I just want them to stop acting like it's okay." "Good," Naomi said, "because you're not the first and you're not the only one." She flipped open the folder, revealing photocopied statements, timestamps, and the grainy stills from the park's surveillance system. "There are others. Past complaints. Some buried, some ignored." She paused, tapping one of the reports. "Sharon McKnight, 5 years ago. Same officer, same pattern." Autumn leaned forward. "What happened to her?" "Nothing. Her complaint was closed with no further action." Naomi's voice lowered. "Until now." The next day, Naomi made her way through rows of cold metal filing cabinets in the internal complaint records room, pulling files by hand, one by one. The automated system wouldn't show her what she needed. It wasn't built to find patterns. It was built to protect them. But Naomi had never cared much for polite systems. She traced them with a detective's eye and a survivor's memory. The more she found, the harder her heartbeat became, a steady drum of rage and resolve. 3 different women, 3 separate years, one officer, same language, same behavior, same ending. Lack of evidence. That night, she sat at her kitchen table with a cup of coffee that had long gone cold and a board filled with pinned notes, red string, and names no one had ever meant to remember. Autumn sat opposite her, wide awake, shoulders hunched forward like a boxer between rounds. "You ever feel like screaming?" Autumn asked, voice low. Naomi didn't look up from her notes. "Sometimes I do scream, but it's not the loudest sound that gets heard. It's the one said at the right time, in the right place, with the right witnesses." Autumn nodded slowly, letting the words land. "Then I want to be that sound." "You already are," Naomi said. And with that, they prepared the testimony that would shake the precinct, the press, and everyone who had ever looked the other way. Because what started in a park with humiliation would end in a courtroom with accountability. And no matter how much silence had tried to hide it, the truth had found its voice in a girl with a book, a woman with a badge, and a city that could no longer pretend it hadn't seen what was done in its name. The air outside the courthouse tasted like iron and storm clouds, thick with the weight of things that had gone unsaid too long. Naomi Carter stood under the eaves of the city building, the folder in her arms pressed tight against her chest. Inside, it wasn't just paper, it was fire. Statements, evidence, histories that had once been buried like bones beneath a polished floor. Across the steps, Autumn Holloway stood straight-backed in a blazer too big and borrowed heels that still clicked with conviction. Her hands trembled only when she wasn't speaking. She had spent the past week recounting every inch of that park bench moment, not just once, but over and over to attorneys, press, counselors, and now to a waiting courtroom. Naomi stepped beside her without a word. Autumn didn't need pep talks anymore. She didn't need reminding of what was at stake. She just needed to know that when she walked into that room, she wasn't alone. They entered the building in silence, passing the same polished brass railings that had once seemed too pristine to hold truth. But today they would. In courtroom 2B, people had filled every seat. Reporters lined the back wall like a silent jury of their own, their pens hungry for whatever story they thought they might find. Naomi didn't care what they wrote. She cared that Autumn spoke, and speak she did, clear, composed, like the wind before a storm. "He didn't yell," she said, her voice carrying across the courtroom like a ripple. "He didn't threaten. He smiled, like I was supposed to laugh, like I was supposed to say thank you for what he did, like I was supposed to be small and quiet and grateful." She paused, not for drama, but for breath. "But I'm not quiet anymore." No one moved. No one coughed. No one dared interrupt the silence that followed her voice. Then came Sharon McKnight, steady in a gray wool coat, every step measured. She gave her testimony like someone slicing open a scar to prove it had never healed properly. She didn't shake. She didn't cry. She didn't need to. Her words were knife enough. "They said I was exaggerating," she told the judge. "But I wasn't. And now you know I wasn't." Each statement that followed stacked the truth higher like bricks in a wall too solid to ignore. Naomi didn't testify. She didn't need to. Her role was quieter, but no less thunderous. She sat near the back, eyes locked on the faces of the jury, watching them squirm beneath the weight of pattern and proof. She knew that look, the one that meant the story had finally breached the walls of belief. The defense tried. They played the old cards: misunderstanding, overreaction, proper procedure, but none of it landed. Not after Autumn, not after Sharon, not after the murmurs in the crowd began to sound like something more than doubt. They began to sound like memory. The final witness was Officer Joel Madsen. Pale, nervous, his voice barely a whisper. "I didn't stop him," he said. "I laughed because I didn't know what else to do. I thought it was just locker room stuff. Now I see what it was. It was power, and I let it happen." Naomi watched from her seat as the jury left the room. Her pulse didn't quicken. Her palms didn't sweat. The work had already been done. The truth had already been spoken. She turned to Autumn, who sat now with her hands folded neatly in her lap. Her eyes didn't drift. They stayed fixed ahead, as if she already knew the verdict before it came. When the jury returned, the silence thickened. The judge asked for the paper. The bailiff read it aloud. "Guilty on misconduct, guilty on harassment, guilty on abuse of power." Autumn didn't react. Her spine stayed straight, but her fingers relaxed, just a little, as if something invisible had finally let go. Rick Bowman didn't say a word. He didn't look at Autumn. He didn't speak to the cameras outside. He just walked in cuffs, head bowed, face blank, as the storm that had been waiting on him for years finally arrived. Later that night, Naomi stood at the edge of Palm Hollow Park, the wind playing lightly through the branches, the same ones that had once hidden so much. Autumn sat on the bench alone for a while, then Naomi joined her. No ceremony, no statement, just two women looking at a place that had once been a wound and now was something else. "Do you think it changes anything?" Autumn asked. Naomi considered that. "It doesn't erase it, but it interrupts it, and sometimes that's enough." Autumn looked up. Her eyes weren't tired anymore. "I want to do something, start something for girls like me, for women like Sharon, for the ones still scared." Naomi didn't smile, but her voice softened. "What would you call it?" Autumn was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "The Stand, because that's all I did, really. I stood, and somehow everything started moving." Naomi nodded slowly. "Then we'll build it, and we won't stop until the silence around us is too broken to return." 3 weeks later, the quiet had changed. It wasn't the kind that came from fear anymore, but the kind that followed a decision, a choice to speak, to act, to reclaim something that had been taken. Autumn Holloway sat at a folding table in the back room of a community center that still smelled faintly of paint and sun-warmed linoleum. In front of her were 2 sign-up sheets already half-filled with names in every kind of handwriting, sharp slashes of teenage girls, looping cursive from grandmothers, blocky letters from women who had never written a story before but were finally ready to tell their own. At the top of the sheet, in permanent marker, it said, "The Stand, a space to speak." Autumn didn't think of herself as a leader, not yet. She still struggled to meet her own eyes in the mirror some mornings. But every time someone walked through that door and sat down across from her, she remembered that day on the bench. How it started with silence and ended with something breaking wide open. Today, she waited for someone named Brianna. 14 years old. Came with her older cousin, wanted to talk, maybe. The clock ticked slow. The coffee machine hissed. Then the door creaked and a girl stepped inside, hoodie sleeves pulled over her hands, eyes darting like a cornered bird. Autumn didn't stand. She didn't smile too big. She just nodded and said softly, "You can sit, or not. We don't push here." The girl hesitated, then sat. Autumn didn't ask anything for a full minute. Then she said, "You want to draw something instead?" Brianna nodded slowly. Autumn passed her a marker and a notepad. That was enough. Across town, Naomi Carter sat in the back seat of an unmarked black car, a thick binder in her lap, and the ache of too many sleepless nights behind her eyes. She had officially transitioned out of internal affairs and into a newly formed role, community intervention liaison. She didn't care about the title. What mattered was where she was headed, the office of the district police commissioner. The goal? Real policy. Not just apologies, real consequences, pattern tracking, officer rotation limits, survivor-led debriefing panels. She had a list, she had stories, she had receipts, and now, finally, she had leverage. The city had watched a courtroom take down one of its golden boys. They couldn't ignore it now. Commissioner Rivas was waiting in a corner office that overlooked the city skyline, every building a testament to how far people could rise and how fast they could fall. He didn't shake her hand. He didn't offer coffee. He just said, "This meeting is political dynamite. You know that, right?" Naomi opened the binder. Truth usually is. For the next hour, she laid out everything. Complaint patterns, missed flags, the names of the women who had come forward, and the quiet war they'd been fighting for years. Rivas didn't interrupt. He didn't argue. But when she finished, he rubbed his jaw like a man suddenly aware of how much was at stake. "You're going to make enemies, Tom," he said. "I already have," Naomi replied. "Now I want backup." Rivas leaned forward. "What do you want from me?" Naomi didn't blink. "Policy, transparency, and access. I want my team embedded in precinct reviews. I want complaint histories unsealed. I want restorative justice options funded and led by survivors. And I want it now." He sat back, stunned by the clarity. "And if I say no?" Naomi reached into her folder and pulled out a flash drive. "Then I released the timeline, the missed complaints, the backdated reviews, everything." Rivas didn't touch the drive. But his eyes changed. "You're serious." "We already stood up," she said. "Now it's your turn." That night, as Naomi drove back through the dim streets of Palm Hollow, the lights seemed softer somehow, like a city trying to forgive itself. She passed the park, its benches now newly repainted, the one under the old oak tree bearing a small engraved plaque that read simply, "To those who refuse to stay quiet." She pulled over and sat in her car for a while, engine off, window cracked. The wind whispered through the branches. Somewhere nearby, a girl was laughing. Across the street, the door to a small storefront flicked open. Autumn Holloway stepped outside, wiping her hands on a towel, her hair pulled up in a messy knot. She didn't see Naomi right away. She was too busy talking to a woman carrying a toddler, pointing toward the posted flyers in the window. Free support groups, anonymous reporting forms, art nights. Naomi watched for a moment longer, then stepped out. "You painted the door," she said. Autumn turned and smiled. "Yeah, wanted something different, something new." "Red's a bold choice," Naomi said. Autumn looked at the glossy finish, deep and defiant. "It's the color of warning and courage. Figured it fit." They stood there in the quiet, not needing to say much. Then Autumn asked, "You ever think about what we'd be doing if none of this happened?" Naomi thought for a second. "No, because this did happen, and we're exactly where we're supposed to be." "Do you think it's enough?" Autumn asked. Naomi's gaze followed the streetlights flicker into life. "No, but it's more than what we had before, and it's only the beginning." Autumn nodded, then reached into her bag and pulled out a folded note. "Someone left this on the sign-in sheet today. No name, just these words. Thank you for showing me that silence isn't strength. Standing is." Naomi's throat tightened, but she just smiled. "Looks like we're not alone anymore." "Not even close," Autumn said. Behind them, inside the center, a room full of voices rose laughter, questions, hesitations turning into declarations. And out front, the red door stood wide open.